Right, well, it's exactly 4 o'clock, and I'm going to say, now, how do I go to main screen? View is just speakers view. To say hello, it's 4 o'clock on a very wet day, and I'm sure none of you have been out in the garden, but I'm sure that others are watching what's happening in Washington at the moment. But this started off because I thought that so many times we talk about our wonderful snowdrops at Hill Close, we talk about our apples, we talk about the chrysanthemums, we talk about the blossom and the sempervivums, but we do forget that we have a very special border in plot 25, which just keeps going on for the whole year. And I thought we would go through that because there's quite a lot that you can do yourself if you listen to how we got there. It was nearly by accident that we got to this border. So we're going to start. And the other thing is that I've shortened it slightly because it was originally planned for December, but it's getting mid-January now, and snowdrops are coming out, and we're all moving into another area of gardening and springtime. So we're just having a little tack on of snowdrops, not really telling you too much about them, but where you might like to go and find out more. It's also a little advert or push that we are going to be open in February, but we with the caveat that please do not travel too far to come to Hill Close. So let's get going on the border itself, or the talk itself. And let's see, we're there. Right, let's go back to the slideshow, which is right. We're here at the start, Hill Close Gardens and the bulb border.
We're not seeing your share at the moment, Rosemary.
Oh, aren't you? What
Have
do
you
I do now?
click on your green button
I haven't got a green button yet. I'm still on my.
on your Zoom screen at the bottom?
I'm on my PowerPoint.
Yeah, you'll need to go back to Zoom.
Okay, let's escape that and go back to Zoom.
And
Okay.
then share. And hopefully you've still got your PowerPoint there as a window,
I've got
have
my
you?
PowerPoint. Oh, I've got back to PowerPoint.
There you go. That's good.
Right. So
And if you now do your go to slideshow.
Yes, well, we'll just go back to from the beginning, and we'll start again.
Okay, so if you just give us some silence so that we can cut in the edit. So if you go back to the first screen again, that would be good.
Okay.
And now just give some silence, please. And you can start when you're ready. Thank you.
Right. Well, this is perhaps a view which you're not really aware of, but in April, it's suddenly, you come round the corner and you suddenly see it. So this is the real start of the talk. I have taken a slight liberty that we are talking about bulbs, but also about corms and about tubers, but we're not going to look at any rhizomes. And equally, we're not going to look at formal bulb borders. Beautiful as they are, they're a lot of work and they really don't suit being under a canopy of fruit trees. And just having a little bit of horticultural background, fruit trees like having bare soil around them. Grass is incredibly greedy, both in taking up any moisture and also nutrients. If you cut out a square out of this grass here, you'd find it is as dry as a bone underneath. So preferably you leave that amount, at least that amount, around any tree if you want it to look good or be good. So this afternoon, we're looking at this particular border, which is plot 25, and we're going to be looking at this area here. This is a photograph, and we were talking about this earlier. We think it must have been taken from the flats. This is definitely pre-restoration, and the gardens look incredibly empty, really. I know that there's no leaf on the trees, but this is the border that we're going to be looking at with the pear trees, and nothing has happened here. In the restorations, we were very concerned to keep the pattern of the paths as they were. So that was a path that had to be restored, and there's a path just along here that needed to be restored, and one along there. So that path was restored, and you can see that the grass around the trees actually had to go into the path because it was, well, that was just as it was. And this is where we're going to be looking today. Now, we've a few years later suddenly realized that the pear trees was not looking their best. They were looking a bit starved and the fruit wasn't good. So we looked at anything for disease and they were all right for that. It was just general cultivation. And going back to the business of having soil around trees, we realized that the trees, the pear trees, had got the lawn right up to the trunk. So that was taken away, and a thin border was instituted, which linked the pears together. It was about 2 foot wide. The next thing was then what was going to go in there, because it's hot there. It's southwest facing. It's dry because it's under the trees. It's got a canopy. It's sunny. It faces southwest. The soil is poor. There's a canopy of trees, which is part of the beauty of that border, but it's something to take into account. And it's windy. We get, the wind comes straight off from the race course. So that is the situation that we have to cope with. We then said, well, what are the criteria of what we can plant? And the main one was that anything that went in that border was not going to be greedy, did not need a lot of goodness. It had to be shallow rooted, because again, we didn't want the roots getting involved with the roots of the trees. Not more than about, I put 2 foot, but I think most probably 1.5 foot. And a delicate structure. Really what I was meaning by that was that it wasn't going to be a heavy clumpy structure, and it had to be able to stand the wind. So that was our need for plants to go there. And we looked at anything that we might have, which are shrubs, perennials, annuals, and bulbs. We felt that shrubs would be too solid and would need most probably deep rooting. Perennials, again, the same, but most probably only looked good for about 4 or 5 months, and come the winter time and early spring, not very exciting. Annuals are good ideas, but hard work, needing to be planted out. So it came down to bulbs, and that was easy. And so we started off by planting some snowdrops, lots of snowdrops. We even had to buy snowdrops in. So it was snowdrops and aconites and cyclamen and coum. Well, the snowdrops were so poor in the first year that we had to find some from the rest of the garden to plant in there. The aconites, there were only about 2 or 3, and we wondered if they were going to take. But the cyclamen and coum, which should flower in February, were fine. So that was the basic start. And then we went into these beautiful irises, which are a joy. It's iris, and it's Lady Beatrice Stanley, and it's multiplied and it looks gorgeous. And I suspect there's some out now, but already this is at very early in the year with the odd snowdrop, some crocuses, some aconites, and these irises here. And a bit later on, again about the same. But the aconites are looking absolutely beautiful. They are taking over, and I suspect will be in the grass this year. They're a plant that either loves you or hates you, and there is no rhyme or reason why they take, but they have taken in that border, and they are a sight. We have the early crocuses here, and then some later. I apologize for the quality of that, but there are lots of these early species crocus that could be planted, not the later big, rather big, bold Dutch crocus. Again, moving on a little bit later, but if you look up here, which is a bit of a euphorbia, but you can see that plant looks too solid for the rest of this border. So that came out. And then we started off with these Iphions, which are at times, I'm just going to, this one here is rather inclined to take over, and we might have to be a bit more fierce about it, but there is this white one, then the ordinary one, and then the pink one of Charlotte Bishop. Those 2 last ones take time to settle, and they don't increase as much. But then we start on the small tulips, and I mean small species tulips, for 2 things. They are small, they will repeat every year, whereas if you have the taller tulips, they're too tall and they can't cope with the wind. So they're beautiful. And this is another small tulip and another one. There are lots of these very beautiful little species tulips. This is a Corydalis, and again, I apologize for the photograph. The thing about bulbs, and again for this one, is that they just disappear, and you really don't know where they're going to come up unless you're very good on your recording. This is an Iris tuberosa, quite weird. Some people love it, some people don't. But it adds to the border, and you can see now the aconites are all over the place, but have flowered. And again, another beautiful tulip, a little bit taller, but still lovely. And then we come into these leucogyms, which are called snowflakes. And this particular one is the taller of the 2 main ones. They're different from snowdrops in that all their petals are the same, whereas in snowdrops you get 3 outer petals and 3 inner petals. But that they nearly were too tall. They do occasionally get battered by the wind, but there's so many of them that you can easily just gather them, put them inside. They're good cut flowers as well. but you really, if you're having them, get that variety. The others are a bit weak and weedy. And this is the other one, which we don't have in the border because it does like a bit more shade and a bit more moisture. And again, a bit more tulips. Now you can see here all the variety of Iphions, tulips, some more tulips, the leucojums, more tulips, and I think there is some anemone de Camp in there. And we go into Chenodoxia, another spring bulb, more spring bulbs with again little tulips and the Iphions. A bit later, but not much, with some anemones in there, giving a different colour in the border, and scillas. Now, pear blossom is quite different from either plum or apple. The plum comes out first and is all white and quite delicate. Then comes this beautiful blossom of the pears with this crimson deep stamens, I think. And that is the canopy that goes over this border. And here you can see this is the border at its best. And that's coming in from the tool shed, coming up from the lammer's room. And that's the other view of it. But you can see with the canopy over there and these quite delicate flowers there. And it really is beautiful. That is April. But April doesn't mean the end of bulbs. We always think of bulbs as tulips, daffodils, snowdrops, and perhaps that's the end. But you can go into summer with things like these brodias or tritonias, which they're called now, and that's May. And then the tulbergias in June. That's not a very showy plant, but it will go on producing flowers throughout the rest of the summer. And it smells a bit oniony. And then you go into the summer with gladiolas. This is the wild gladiola. And this is really a bit of a creep into it, which is Cicericium. It just about manages to stay in the border, but it does self-seed. And another beautiful gladiolas. I apologize for this one. It is a cyclamen coum, and you can see that it's got its flowers going backwards. It should be flowering now, but for this particular lot, for some reason or other, it hasn't read the book, and it comes out in August. We do have a few crocosmas. It's not the best place for them. It's too hot and it's too dry. And the hot summer of 2 years ago nearly finished off a lot of crocosmas. They just couldn't cope with the dryness and the heat. This one has been quite good, but we do have some ordinary Montbretia, which is pretty tough, but not as beautiful as this one. We come to August and we're looking at this plant here, which is the one that we get the most queries about. What is that weird plant at the top by the summer house? It's sort of a bit browny, a bit pinky. And you say, does it look like a pineapple? And the answer is yes, because that is its common name, the pineapple plant. But basically, it's a eucomis and a bulb plant. We've got this pinky one, and they're like that. And the yellow one, this isn't a hill close, but it's just to show the yellow. They're fairly substantial. They do occasionally get buttered around, but they're usually still in flower until apple day. So that's October. And they're very good for cut flowers as well. And come October, September, you get the nerines, more often of this pink colour, but they're bulbs and they sit there quite comfortably. And you get some colchicums and a few annuals. Marigolds are fine because they haven't got much root. Colchicums can have really leafy, leathery leaves in the springtime, which is often why you don't plant them around. But this lot and these, their leaves are much more discreet, but they do give this lovely autumn colour. And the Hesperantha, which is not really a good plant for here. They prefer a bit more moisture, but it does flower, and it gives a flower in September, October. It used to be called Hesperantha, Schizostylus, and before that, Kaffir lily, but of course you can't use that now. And it does produce, its flowering time is unpredictable. It can go right on till late December, but it's good. And then you come into this lovely autumn species crocus, which they are frail, you can see here. And the winds do rather bash them around, but they seed around as well, and they're lovely. We don't exactly finish up, but you can see this is autumn time with some of the pears around. This Sternbergia is something that you either love or you hate. It's an October-November flower, and it has these very clear yellow crocus-like flowers and this very clean green. Now, to me, that's not an autumn colour. That's a spring colour, but other people love it. So there are always plants that are love-hate, and I would put this as one, but I admire it. It's made up well. And then the Cyclamen hydrofolium, which, as you can see, is quite different from the coum. It has less propeller-like leaves and, petals. And then these you can see, it's called hydrofolium because they look like ivy. And then finally, we come to November with the beginning of the snowdrops. People rave about early snowdrops, but for me, they are not really exciting, and the slugs love them, but it is the end of the year. So that is what we can see throughout the year. It has its height at the time in April, but it does flower all through the year. And it is an idea of taking bulbs and putting them in a hot, dry spot. The only trouble, and I find this difficult, is that they come up and flower, the leaves drop down dead, and you have no idea where they are. So sometimes you get your crocuses moved around because you've been weeding around there, but that is our bulb border. But it really is quite an achievement to have a border that looks so good throughout most of the year. We haven't got anywhere else in the garden where that happens. And most of our visitors walk up there for the first time when they come. So the next slide is the next few plants is going to be of things we didn't grow or things we said wouldn't be quite right. Now the fritillarias really are meadow plants, moisture, so that they were out. The violets are can be very robust and spreading, and so they're out. Equally, grape hyacinths. Now you see, they look quite, these are grape hyacinths. You can see how they've taken over and they seed like nobody's business. But ordinary hyacinths are really too solid for that border. There are prettier, smaller, either pale blue or pale white or white, or a mixture of grape hyacinths, which would be okay. These fritillarias, you can see how tall they are. They would never stand up to the wind. And again, the ranunculus fricaria would spread all over the place, and so would these crocuses thomasiana. Lovely, but would take over. Again, another painted lady fricaria, which again spreads like mad. The camasias are slightly too tall, and again, really the last of the bulbs. They look better in a proper border, an ordinary border, but again, lovely. And we have a crocosma here, which, as I said, they really need a cooler spot and with some moisture. So those are some of the plants that we've looked at and said no. There's other spring bulbs that you could think of, like the anemones and the dog tooth bulbs, but again, they need shade. So you can nearly divide out, particularly the bulbs that need hot, dry spot, and the others that need a bit more moisture and a bit more shade. So those are our no plants, really. So that is the border. And I think if you start to visit now, I'm sure that you will find that the aconites are out in that border. Now, we're just going to do a little bit about snowdrops because they are coming out. We can't have our lovely display inside, unfortunately. And even if we put it outside, it would be quite difficult to ensure that there was social distancing. But it gives you some idea of what we have. We have over 120 different cultivars. And I'm not going to go down showing you what is the difference, why is that, and why is that, because you can find that out yourself. But this is just to give you some idea of what to look for and notice in snowdrops. You can see the three outer petals and the inner petals, which nearly always have a marking at the bottom. It looks like the bottom, but in fact it's the top of the petal because they've just hung down. This is a beautiful one, which is called Three Ships simply because it should be in flowering at New Year, at Christmas Eve. These are fairly new. They seed around, and so there's lots of trimlet, and that is trump. I heard of one lady who bought trump and then she realized, and she said, I really couldn't have that man in my garden, and went back and changed it for this. These are the yellow ones. Again, it's a love or not love. This is an early one. Again, you can see the different markings there. Blueberry tart is called that because the flower doesn't hang down. It just stands upright and looks at you, and somebody says, well, it's just lying on its back, isn't it? It's a real tart of a flower. This one, again, is one of the beauties of having green tips. And here is the beautiful lady, no, sorry, it's, right, let's go back. A very full double, another yellow, and you can see the whole plant looks a bit bleached. And this walrus is the first snowdrop I ever knew by name because it was easy. It was double and it had the outer petals were thin and narrow and long with little green bits. And of course, walrus tusks. So those are some of the varieties of snowdrops that you can get. And I put together some groups of snowdrops because some people are moving on from knowing that there's two sorts of snowdrops, a single and a double. And then you think, I really do like some of those other snowdrops. And what are they? So this it would be what I would recommend if you're starting early in your snowdrop journey. I can see I comes out now and is a very slightly tall single and makes up well. Lady Beatrice Stanley. It is the same lady who had the irises named after her. She must have been a great horticulturalist. A beautiful double that comes out in January, about mid-January. And I use that as a marker. If she's out by the 12th of January, that is about, was on the right start of the season. If she's about earlier, we're early. And if she's not out after then, where the season is late. These Creatrex doubles are a collection that was um, made by somebody in Norfolk. And unfortunately, there are no definitive descriptors of them. And they are all beautiful. Most of them are named after Shakespeare names, usually from Midsummer's Night's Dream. But most people have got to the stage of just saying they're Greatex doubles. Some are tall and some are small, but they're all good plants. SR not, again, a mid-season one. Magnet, which has longer pedicels which wave in the breeze, again a good one. And of course, our ordinary Nivalis, which is one of the later snowdrops. So if somebody was starting to have snowdrops, I would suggest that they look for this. This is Atkinsii, and you see it's a very simple snowdrop. Then nobody believes you when you say that snowdrops are scented, and they are. Not all of them, and in a way, because it's only a few, it helps you decide as a plant identification. Very rarely do you find any book that says that that say Mrs. McNamara has a perfume. And I don't know why, whether it's because everybody's sense of smell is different. But one of the things that I often do is to gather a bunch of snowdrops from the garden, one or two from each different one, and take them into the house and have a look at them. Now you can always tell if you've picked up any of these, because you will find that you have got a really usually honey smell, and Mrs. McNamara is not really honey. Bess is honey. Neil Fraser. Armine is definitely almondy. Now Brenda Troyle and S. Arnott both smell of honey. She comes out a bit earlier, and that's another, well, literally gin smell. So do smell snowdrops if you're buying them in the flower. And that's Mrs. McNamara, a really nice snowdrop that comes out early January, tall. The story is that it's named after Dylan Thomas's mother-in-law. It's an Irish snowdrop. And then you have some doubles. The ordinary double is untidy. It has lots more than 3 petals inside it, but usually 2 or 3 are slightly larger and untidy. So as I said, Lady Beatrice Stanley is very tidy. Richard Ayres, again early. Hippolyta, this is one of the Greatrex doubles, is later. And you've seen a picture of Walrus, and there's Hill Poe. So that's some of the doubles. And this is Lady Beatrice Stanley. She is very neat. You can see there, very neat. It looks like a ballerina's dress. And yellow snowdrops. Well, some people love them, some people don't. They are not as robust as a lot of other snowdrops. And equally, they are not so reliable. So you might get Blanche-Inge that looks lovely in yellowy 1 year, and then next year the same bulb will produce a flower which has more green than yellow. So nobody really quite knows why these snowdrops come up as yellow. There are some woods which seem to throw up these yellow snowdrops. Particularly, there's a wood in Scotland that does it. So Lady Elphinstone is a very late double yellow and quite a short one. Again, you might get half yellow and half not. Sandersie group, that's because there were so many that were so similar that they gave up naming them and just put them all as a group. Now, Caroline Elwes has a real story in that the Elwes family have brought back snowdrops from Turkey, and he has been a collector of snowdrops. And I think it's his granddaughter had this yellow snowdrop named after her. And there was a big clump of these yellow snowdrops. And one day they disappeared. Nobody knows where they are. They are so outstanding that if anybody tried to put any of the bulbs on the market, people would know immediately where it came from. So somebody has a huge clump of these snowdrops, which only they can see. But however, at Colesbourne, they did have some tucked away out of sight. So it hasn't all been lost to a thief, and I will say a thief. But if you're thinking of buying it, then you are talking about 50 or 60 pounds. And this is just a nice yellow snowdrop. But when we're talking about prices of snowdrops, I think the first time that we ever sold snowdrops at Hill Close, Chris Begg could not believe that we sold a bulb for £6. I think he has managed to progress beyond that now. But you can get a lot of snowdrops for under £10. And then you start to really think that you are getting into being a proper galanthophile. I mean, every year I say I am not going to buy any more snowdrops. And already this year I have. So this is one of the Sandys. It's a nice snowdrop if you're going to have a yellow one. Now, I have put places to visit. We can't get out and about at the moment. But most of you would be able to get to Hill Close Gardens at Warwick because most of you are in the area. The National Garden Scheme book usually has a list of snowdrop gardens which are open in February. Unfortunately, most of these are not open this year. Now, Colesbourne, if you haven't been, you must put that on your must do, either the end of February or next year. It's between Cirencester and Chichester. No, not Chichester, sorry, Cirencester. Cheltenham and Cirencester. It combines both of either masses and masses of snowdrops under the woods, and then collection of wonderful named snowdrops. And you can buy a lot of named snowdrops there. And if you're wise, you leave your credit card behind. But they are very special ones. Ashwood's Nurseries, well, that's over by Wolverhampton. They have a lot of snowdrops in what I would describe as more garden situations. And Hadsock Priory, I think it's near Nottingham. There are lots and lots of snowdrop places around because everybody realizes that people want to go and look at something in February when nothing else is good. Some of them, particularly Colesbourne and Ashwoods, have really good websites. So if you can't get to them, you can at least see some pretty pictures. But there are places to visit. And equally, there are some useful books, which this is the one I use. And it is everything. It tells you all the different species, where they are, who are the great galanthophiles, where you can see them, and then lots and lots and lots of drawings of them. A good place to check out your unknown snowdrop. This is a new book, which I've been told is very good. And then this is one of the Kew Gardens series. So they are a very good reference as well. But as I say, go back to the websites of these people. Again, beautiful, beautiful pictures. Really make you want to spend the money, which is what they do. You can buy them now. Some of them are online, or I think Avon Bulbs send some out in August. That's when, before they've started to grow their roots and they're dry. That is the accepted best way to move snowdrop bulbs. But unless you've planted them in these water lily pots, it's quite difficult to know which ones you're actually moving. So a lot of people split their bulbs and move them just after they've flowered. And then you can see where they are and what they're doing. So these are some, what I would call the coffee table ones to look at. And I'm going to finish with our own snowdrop, which is, of course, Warwickshire Gemini, with a one stem and 2 flower heads from it. It doesn't do this consistently. And every year when we're doing the display, we have to go around the gardens and look in about 4 or 5 different spots to see how many, if any, we can find. Some people are really very good at growing them, and we just don't know why. But there you go. One year I was asked to dig up every one that had 2 flowers on it, and I planted them all together. But what happened next year? They were all just single ones. So anyhow, that is just a taster of snowdrops. There's lots more to find out. just enjoy them. I'm afraid at the moment, the ones I have gathered in the garden are really dirty. And that's unusual because they don't get affected by rain or frost or wind. But it's that this heavy rain has kicked up enough splashes on them, and that's quite unusual. When it's really cold, they will flop, which is why most snowdrop gardens don't open till 11 o'clock when it gets a bit warmer, and then they straighten up and they're fine. So I'm going to finish this now with another view, and then I don't know if we can deal with any questions. Mike will be able to tell you that. And that was part of the display last year. You can put snowdrops as part of a winter garden with some beautiful cornus leaves, primroses, and perhaps some crocus. But there are a lot of very interesting winter gardens. If you go to Anglesey Abbey in Cambridge, that was the first of the winter gardens. Well, not quite the first of the winter gardens, but that was the one that was specifically planted up and is really quite a joy. So there are lots to see, and I hope you come and look at our snowdrops and look at the bulb border, particularly in April. And I shall say, enjoy your snowdrops. They do cheer you in this rather grey weather. So, Mike, we're there, are we?
If anybody would like to ask a question, if you'd like to unmute and come in one at a time, please.
Right, everybody knows everything about snowdrops and about bulbs.
Hello, Rosemary.
Yeah, hello.
Do you feed your bulb border?
I do, yes. I give it a liquid feed when the leaves are there, but after the flowers. So they would get a liquid feed. And I think that we nearly always put some grow more around them. I have been told, and this is on the best authority, that when you plant them out now, is to put some root grow on them, and that really does them well.
To begin with, right, okay.
I think that's when you're going to plant out your expensive ones.
I can see why you haven't got primulas and things there, because it's just too dry, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Yeah.
And that would make it a spring border,
Yeah.
like you've got on the top of 19. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a mixture of all sorts of lovely things. I mean, you've got hellebores as well, but they wouldn't do on that border.
No, no.
Anybody else? You're all going to come in and have a look at Hill Close. We are going to be open every day in February. We can't do the Snowdrop weekend, and we can't do the tutorial, the workshop on making snowdrop bulb, but snowdrop, sorry, we get this right, bulbs of snowdrops, which we hang from the trees usually, but I doubt, we might do some, Rosemary, a bit later on.
Rosemary, that was absolutely fascinating. As you know, I just enjoy the flowers. I have the faintest idea where they come from or why or what, but they look so lovely. And what I am struck by is that I can count, roughly speaking, 30 or 40 borders in the garden. And all that effort and dedication to one border leaves 29 more. It does illustrate the scale of the horticulture of Hill Close Gardens. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rosemary.
Well, I must say that I think that Chris now knows there's more than two sorts of snowdrops. But he hasn't yet bought you a very expensive one, Margaret.
No.
Uh, is there somebody else on the chat line? Who is that? Is there a query on it? That's
I
from
can't see
Anne and
anybody else
Tricia.
unmuting, so
Oh, Tricia. Trisha's there. Uh, Tricia, you fell over, and is your wrist all right now? I think she may have gone. But there you go. Well, I think that this is where we might just creep down and watch the rest of Washington. I know Mike has recorded everything that's happening there. So thank you very much. And you can all leave and have a cup of tea now. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Rosemary. Bye.
Bye, John.
thank you.
There we go. Right, let's leave. Oh, I'll stay with you for the moment, Mike. Everybody else is leaving. Mike, are we just together now? No, we've got Anne and Sheila. Sheila's going. Right. There we go. Thank you very much, Mike. I couldn't have done it without you. And this is the next bit of technology that we've got to get up and running at Hill.